Thank you, Mr. Chair. As somebody who comes from a state that is completely controlled by one party, the Democrats, have supermajorities in the House and the Senate. We have a Democratic governor who pledged not to sign a legislative drawn map. He broke that pledge when he recently signed a state legislative map drawn with incomplete census data. I listened to Attorney General Holder's opening comments, and I think, wow, we're going to have a group come in and address the partisan gerrymandering in Illinois. Mr. Holder, I enjoyed your opening comments. We got a chance to meet at the State of the Union one year. I'm glad to see you here again. Can you tell me how recently it's been since you've been to Illinois to discuss partisan gerrymandering?
I have focused on partisan gerrymandering around the country and have stood against Democrats who have engaged in that process, whether it was in the case, the redistricting case, in the Rucho case, standing against what happened in Maryland. I've stood against Democrats in New Jersey and in New York who have tried to use power that they have there to engage in partisan gerrymandering. And I am against partisan and racial gerrymandering done by any party in any place.
Well, I would welcome you to come to my home state of Illinois. I didn't get an answer when the last time you were there to talk about this issue. I do have a quick question regarding this. Does the National Democratic Redistricting Committee support the Mexican American Legal Defense Fund's lawsuit against the state of Illinois for the redistricting plan that was adopted by the Illinois General Assembly just a few weeks ago and signed into law by Governor J.B. Pritzker?
I'll be honest with you, I have not had a chance to review that lawsuit, but I'd be more than glad to do that and submit some supplementary comments with regard to the views of the organization and my personal views on the lawsuit.
I really appreciate that. Also, Illinois' current map was drawn in 2011. There's a lot of discussion here about partisan gerrymandering in 2011. There's a district represented by my good friend and colleague, Mr. Chuy Garcia, that is commonly known as the earmuff district. Would that be an example of Democrats packing minorities into one district?
Again, I'm not familiar with the particular map, but gerrymandering is not something that is only done by Republicans. It has been done by Democrats. We've had gerrymandering almost since the inception of our nation, which doesn't mean we have to accept it. Princeton did a study that said that gerrymandering done by Republicans in 2011 was the worst of the past 50 years. But there are Democratic as well as Republican excesses that I stand against. Let me make that very, very clear.
Well, I appreciate that. I noticed during the decade, there were remaps drawn only in Republican states. I would, again, welcome your organization to come to my home state of Illinois any year because the Democrats just gerrymandered the state legislative map, and we expect them to do exactly the same thing with the congressional map. So I welcome you and your team to the fight, and I certainly hope that we can communicate in the future on this. Hey, Mr. Holder, General Holder, both the Carter-Baker Commission and the Bauer-Ginsburg Commission established by President Obama identified inaccurate voter rolls as a national problem. And unfortunately, I believe it's still true today. You served, as we know, as AG from 2009 to 2015. And during your tenure at DOJ, how many NVRA Section 8 enforcement actions or investigations did the department bring against states for failure to conduct list maintenance?
I don't have those numbers in front of me, but we certainly took our obligations seriously in that regard.
According to the DOJ website, there were no enforcement actions for failure to conduct list maintenance, only one action against Florida for so-called purging voters. How did you guys know at DOJ during your tenure if a state was in compliance with provisions of the NVRA or not?
Well, we have a variety of techniques. We certainly listen to public comments that we get from a variety of sources. We have investigative components within the Justice Department that are able to monitor the situations that are happening around the country. We have a Civil Rights Division, a Voting Rights Section that has investigative power. So the Justice Department has a number of ways in which it can monitor situations around the nation.
I appreciate that, sir. And I know many of your donors to the National Democratic Redistricting Committee may not agree with you wanting to come to states like Illinois, but I certainly appreciate your willingness to talk about these things. Do you support donor disclosure?
I do. I do think that there needs to be transparency with regard to who is making donations to political organizations, and that would be good for our democracy.
Well, sir, will you disclose the donors to the National Democratic Redistricting Committee for the record today?
Well, what we do is follow the law as it exists. I'm not going to unilaterally disarm. When Republicans will do the same thing, I will do that, and we will certainly follow the law. But I stand for the disclosure obligations that are contained in the bills that are being considered for Congress.
Well, I would appreciate any disclosure. Happy to talk with you in the future, sir. Thank you for your responses, and thank you to all the witnesses for being here today.